going to make this really simple bookcase that's about 60 inches tall, 30 inches wide, 10 inches deep. It's in the arts and crafts or mission style. Features your typical latticework sides. The bottom and middle shelf are fixed, and the top extends over to give you a nice sort of lip in which you can then attach corbels or other decorations that you might find appropriate. It has a nice gentle arc, and detail most of the steps. And since most of the steps are milling raw lumber to start with, I'll fast forward through much of that since that's about as exciting as watching paint dry. I hope you enjoy, and I think this will end up being in 3 parts. The first step with most projects starts with raw wood. This is some white oak I've had for years. Came from a tree harvested in West Virginia, and I want to get the last of it used up because I need the space in the shop. It's basically a reverse jigsaw puzzle. You start with the whole piece, lay out where you want various items, avoiding knots, avoiding defects, and generally trying to make the best use of your wood. I use a pretty big fat pencil and just give myself a few inches to spare on each side. When you're laying out what you will want as far as parts, I keep a cut list handy, constantly looking at the width and length of a board as well as the grain if I like it, if it's pretty for a showpiece, or if it's gnarly or got some defects, or it might just be a structural piece. I'm working around knots and other defects, and I'm also checking the top and bottoms to make sure that a piece that I think is clean is actually going to be clean when I cut it out. This is just a rough example of how you lay stuff out, working around defects, marking them so you can cut them out. If you need a 30-inch piece and it has a 1-inch tenon on each side, that's 32, so give yourself 33, 34 in a rough cut phase. Mark everything at this point and then get on to cutting. When you're doing your rough cutting, I generally follow the marks. Sometimes double check the base of the board to be sure I haven't missed something. It's pretty brutal on your miter saw, but generally that's the job it's for in the shop. These boards are 12 to 14 feet in length, so manhandling them around and getting them in position is a little difficult, but the first step's always fun, getting everything broken down. As you'll see in most of these videos, is really working poorly today. I think I've got a clog or some other issue going on. But nothing that a vacuum cleaner won't fix. Stock prep's pretty much by the book. I've got an 8-inch joiner, so I try to limit everything to 8 inches. What you'll see I do here is basically face then edge. To do the face, I take a good hard look at it, find the cup side, put the cup side down. I can't really tell grain direction by looking, so you'll see I rub my hand under the board and feel for the smooth versus rough direction. Then I orient it so that the smooth side goes through the planer, or the joiner rather. Constantly fighting buildup of small chips, because believe it or not, they'll actually leave a mark in the wood you're trying to get clear. But at this point it's pretty rough. And you may notice that some of the pieces, when I say quote unquote I'm done, there still may be a pocket or a small divot. What I'm not trying to do here is to mill the thing ready to finish grade. I want to get it flat enough to go through the thickness planer. And once you get that, the thickness planer can then be used to finish any residual issues on that face you started with. So some of the pieces were slightly wider than 8 inches, and my joiner just couldn't handle it, so it leaves a lip. One way to get rid of that is to simply cut it off, and if you've got the stock, that's fine. Otherwise, you can use a sled to run it through the planer. I've tried using sleds in the past, and the results are really unpredictable, so if I've got the material, I'll just go ahead and cut it off. Now, in this particular piece, I wanted to save some of that burl. I'm going to use that for an arch, and I did not want to lose even that 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 inch, and so I went ahead and knocked down that lip by hand. And of course, this piece of burled white oak is tough as nails, and it's a pretty sharp plane. But boy, it's working hard. But I saved most of the burl. The burl will be used in an arch on one of the bookcases that I'll be probably keeping for myself. So this is officially the 2S stage. It's been rough cut. It's been finished on 2 sides, again with some minor defects still. That the thicknesser will take out, because I'm not trying to lose a lot of material chasing a small ding or divot. I want to get as much thickness I can out of the stock. From there, it's over to the planer, and you'll see I feed a lot of pieces through where nothing really happens. I guess as to what my thickest part is, and I start there, and then I run every single one through until they all start to cut. So the first couple of passes, there may be 2 or 3 of them that don't actually get any work done, but then it starts to fall into place. Then once you get to the point where you're happy on this side, rotate it and do any touch-up you might need coming out of the joiner. Since all my stock is 4/4, I don't have any 8/4 stock. I've got to rip down these pieces to glue up the leg parts, and it's a lot easier just to do them now before the next step in finishing, so I can glue them up and run them through the joiner and planer as a unit. Some folks may comment that it looks like my hands are dangerously close to the blade, but it's entirely the camera angle. I'm not a spring chicken, and I keep my mitts well away from the spinning steel, and I generally go slow despite the fact that these clips are sped up. Trying to keep as much width as I can on the shelving stock. It started at anywhere from 6 to 8 inches depending upon the board that we use. So here I'm simply aligning the fence of the table saw over and over again just to make a square up cut and to give me a nice 4-sided piece that I can use for the next steps. Okay, we have leg stock, rail stock, top stock, shelf stock and shelf extension stock to bring the shelves up to 10 inches. So now we're ready to do some glue up. The rails are not cut to size. They're only 3S. No sense ripping them till we know what size they need. The rest were just ripped clean because they're going to result in glue ups. There are some defects like this knot in one of the leg stocks, and there's a wee bit of staining on one of the top stocks, but since I'm making two and one I intend to keep, the other is a spec piece to go to a shop, I'm going to put the defect pieces on the one that I'm retaining, because I certainly don't mind a knot here or there, and don't really have a lot of other white oak left. I do have this giant piece that is all that's left of a stock pickup I did about a year ago. Before I can say I'm truly done with the stock prep, I've got to do the glue up of the two 4/4 pieces to make as close as I can to an 8/4 leg. I'm only doing half of them, even though they're all stacked up. I intended to do all of them, but I couldn't find my big glue brush. Every now and then the shop seems to eat something, so I'm using a little brush, and I just didn't think I had enough open time to do it all. But basically standard glue, stack, clamp, and let it sit. In this case, I let it sit overnight. So here we're just putting a flat side on the leg after it has come out of the glue up. The idea is to true up the two pieces that were glued together. The other side will be trued up in the planer. And finally, the last step in the stock prep is to finish the other side of the legs after the glue up, putting the previously jointed side down, running them through until the glue line is clean and tight. And I do flip it on the last pass and do just a very thin shave as sort of a beauty pass to get rid of any mill marks that the planer rollers have made. All right, that's where we'll leave off for part one. We have all of our parts dimensioned and ready to begin assembly. We have a really great leg stock now that has some great Rayfleck from the white oak. We have stock for the rails. We have stock for the lattice. We have enough for two tops. And we have 10 shelves and pieces to extend those shelves to 10 inches. So when we get back together, we'll be cutting them to final size, mortising, tenoning, and doing some glue up. So hope everybody stays safe.